Welcome everybody. Good morning. As always, it's great to see you guys here. Welcome to MakerBot Chats. My name is Felipe. I was just waiting a little bit, to make sure that the connection is stable and everything. You know how it goes with these live streams. But yeah, episode 26. We'll be talking today about how do we change the extruders on the MakerBot method. I have an interesting setup this morning, as you can see. Right here, I've got an additional webcam. I've used it before, of course, and then, of course, the standard one here in the computer. The reason why I have them both is that way I'll be able to show you more in detail what's happening here with the interface, and then how do I actually go about changing the extruders, and also side loading, another one of the more standard questions that we keep hearing from you guys. How do you use third-party materials on the method? So we'll cover that, and then we'll open it up to questions. So again, we'll be changing the extruders, using the Labs extruder, and also loading third-party materials on the method. Today I'm going to be using a method X. This is the more advanced, I would say, version of the method. The biggest difference is actually the temperatures that it can reach. In the heated chamber, you'll be able to get to 110 degrees Celsius, which allows you to print with really interesting materials such as polycarbonates and the like. So yeah, let's get started. First of all, yeah, I guess, if you guys didn't know about it, Method has two extruders. So I'll let me move the camera a little bit here to show you, and open the bay. Here we go. So Method comes in standard with two extruders. In the case of Method X, it comes with a 1XA extruder and also with the 2XA extruders. That's for model material and support material. Essentially the support material allows you to create a scaffolding. That's how we've been referring to it while you print. And it essentially fulfills that promise of 3D printing, which is just printing anything that you would want, regardless of the complexity. Now, those extruders, of course, can be swapped depending on what you're trying to do. Especially, and I'll just give you also an overview of the, give me 1 second, of the extruders themselves inside of the printer, right? So wait, let me bring the extruders in focus. Move the camera a little bit. And by the way, we'll be taking questions. Alejandra, she's back there in YouTube, actually tracking all of your guys' questions and comments. So if you have anything that you'd like to learn more about specifically as we go through this, do let us know. Oh, here we go. Much better. Now you guys can see me. But yeah, send us the questions that you might have, and I'll keep going through the process, and then, give you guys time to ask everything that you want, either now or at the very end. But as I was saying, Method comes in standard with two extruders. As I said before, it's extruder 1XA and extruder 2XA in this case. Let me bring it closer to the camera so you guys can see. And both of them are loaded laterally here following these feed tubes, right? As soon as you start to play with it, you'll realize that maybe for some applications, you will want to use different types of materials, right? So we have dedicated extruders for different materials. That essentially allows you to have a cleaner, I would say, a cleaner experience, right? The reason is that when you're using more challenging materials, maybe you will see that, it's not a maybe, I've seen it myself, right? You'll see that they will want to be using a single extruder. Why? Because when you toggle back and forth between using the same extruder between materials, you do risk contaminating the materials or cross-contaminating the materials, and also you do risk clogging your extruders because these materials will have different melting temperature points, right? And that in turn can cause, let's say that you're using a polycarbonate that will print at 250 degrees Celsius, and then all of a sudden you want to switch back to a standard ABS that is going to be printing at 240 or 230, I'm not sure. But the point is that difference in temperature can challenge the extruder and can make the next material over not be able to print properly. So that's why you will want to have individual extruders for individual materials. You know, in my case, I'm lucky enough, of course, of having all of the extruders range from Method, from, you know, the 1C, which is dedicated, the 1C, which is dedicated for composites, 2, which is our water-soluble material, well, supports our water-soluble material, PVA. And you will want to use them in a similar way than you would your drill bits. I keep going to that analogy because I think that it's really useful, right? When you're thinking about drill bits, you have drill bits for wood, you have drill bits for concrete, you have drill bits for metal. In some cases, you'll be able to swap them back and forth, but ideally, you will want to have that dedicated drill bit for the specific application. I want a 1/4-inch hole in wood, therefore, this is the bit that I should be using. And it's the same story here with the extruder. So I'll go ahead and swap the first one. You guys have both views here, like the extruder view and then my printer view. Here in my printer interface, right, my touchscreen, I'll be able to access the extruders changing. Let me swap back here. So the extruder changing process, or the material change process for that, via 2 different paths. The first one is just to click on here. Let's see, maybe here you can see it better. Click on the second icon, the extruders icon. That will take me here to my extruders overview, and each of them will be able to link me back to the materials page. So if I click on that materials page, I'll see that I've got ABS loaded on one of my extruders and SR30 on the second one. And I can just, well, I have 2 options. Since they are currently loaded, the options that I have is to either purge the material. Purge will essentially drive a little bit more material through the extruder just to clean it up. You know, sometimes you just want to make sure that the extruder is a little bit clean, or maybe you just started using it. You want to run a few, you know, centimeters of the material just to make sure that it's flowing freely, and unloading the material, right? So I'll go ahead and hit purge first. This is just to show you guys how fast the extruders can actually warm up. And as I'm doing that, you'll see here how my extruder actually changes color, right? It goes, you know, I got both of them, the 2XA and the 1XA on the left. So let's move this carriage right here. So this now it's bright red, which essentially is saying to me, or telling me, that it's heating up, right? It's going to go to 245 degrees Celsius. That's because I'm using ABS at the moment. And as soon as it hits that temperature, the material will start flowing, right? I pressed the button about, I don't know what you guys think, like 20 seconds ago. That's another interesting thing about Method, like the speed at which you can actually load, unload, and heat up your extruders. It's rather impressive. If you're used to other MakerBot platforms, you'll realize that it's much faster than, you know, the Replicator Plus, or, you know, even more so than the Rep 2 back in the day. It's going to take about, I would say, like 30 seconds, well, maybe 45, to get all the way to 245 degrees Celsius. And as soon as it does, so 239, 240, once it does, you'll hear how it starts feeding the filament. And if I come back here, well, actually, let me move my camera so you guys can see. Right now, all that I'm doing is purging that extruder, right? So all that I'm doing is having that material flow. You know, sometimes you'll want to do that every, you know, when you change materials, if you're changing colors or if you're changing properties, it's an important step to take. And once you're happy with how the material is flowing, let me get out of that glare. It's going to be tricky. I can just hit confirm. That'll stop, and that completes the process. I can hit done here. Now, for changing the extruder, right, I'm going to hit, instead of purge, I'm going to hit unload. So I'll go ahead and hit unload first. The extruder is going to be heating up again. It'll go to that same temperature, and as soon as it does, and I'll change view here. Yeah, kind of an interesting setup that I've got. But as soon as it does, I'll be able to just remove the filament from my extruder. So now that it's hit that temperature, it says unloading, the material is backing out of the extruder, please wait. And it'll automatically, I'll open the drawer here in the printer, but it'll automatically, I don't know if you guys can hear it, it's driving the material back into the bay. And once I'm ready, it'll say, well, how do I show you guys both. So here in the main touchscreen, it says just rewind spool, so I can go ahead and open my drawer bay, back out that my material, all the way back. This process is not automated, unlike the loading process. So here you actually have to manually wind it back out. And once you got it, I can just go ahead and stop the tip here, or clip the tip in my spool. Hit done. And now I'm out of the material. The extruder is now free to be changed, and I can go ahead and first remove the top swivel. That's kind of like my feeding tube that I was showing you guys before. Let me move these so you guys can see a little bit more of it. So remove the main swivel, put it to the side, release the first clip, right? I'm just releasing that first latch. In Method, unlike other generations of MakerBot printers, you have actually a mechanical latch. Previously we've used magnets. We just decided that it would be like a stronger grip to just have the latch locking that extruder in place. So opening up the latch like so, that exposes my extruder, and I can just go ahead and pull it up, and there it is, my 1XA extruder, right? It's that simple just to take it out. I know that I'm taking my sweet time, but it's also, I want to make sure that you guys are seeing kind of in detail all of the steps that I'm taking. Now, once I'm ready, and I'll just reload this one so that you guys can see kind of like the back and forth, and then I'll swap back, or I'll jump back to the Labs extruder, which is a different way of loading the filament. But let's say that I wanted to just plug that extruder back in. I close the latch over here, bring the swivel clip back in again, and I go ahead and take my material, open the drawer. With any time that you change material, it's also a good practice to just clip the tip of the material, just to make sure that you start off with a clean section of material, right? So I can just go ahead and put it in. As soon as I bring the material into the drawer bay, it's actually going to be detected by the interface. So I can show you guys here, right, what just happened. Here I got my filament on the side. It's not detected, but as soon as I put it in there, it goes in and detects that ABS. That's also one of the neat features of Method. It actually detects the material that you're loading, and it will adjust the print temperature, it will adjust the loading speed and the print speed for each of the materials, as long as you're using MakerBot materials, right? All of the MakerBot materials come in with dedicated RFID chip that enables the printer to know, what are the settings that it should be using. So I'll go ahead and hit load. It will ask me to remove the bent material, hit continue. And as you can see now, maybe I'll bring the camera over here. The feeding process is done automatically here, right? It's just going to automatically feed my material into the printer, right? I don't have to do anything. Unlike what happened with the unloading process, where I actually have to rewind the spool, for the loading process, the printer itself is able to just bring up that material all the way across into my extruder up there, and in just a few seconds you'll see that material coming out of my extruders, my material extruder, which is the one on the left. You can hear like a little bit of that sound change. That's just because the different motors that the Method uses. One of them is located here in the drawer bay. The second one, which is the one that's running right now, is located on the extruder itself. And it's the one that will pull the filament like for that very last bit of, I guess, traveling that happens here. I'll just go ahead and close my bay, make sure that everything is, actually running as it should. And, after say like what, 10, 20 seconds, the material will start flowing through my extruder over here. You can see how the material is like slowly dripping in there. Let's see. It's kind of hard to manage the white balance on the camera. So you can see now the material is dripping again. So that completes a full cycle of swapping like a standard extruder, quote unquote standard, right? I can just go ahead and click confirm to confirm that the process is completed. Done. And now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the process of swapping the extruder to a labs extruder and then side loading the material. So using a different type of material, essentially a third-party material with Method. So I'll go ahead and unload the extruder once again. Same process. It's going to take a bit of less time because now the extruder is already hot and ready. Going from 230 to 45. Let me frame up the interface. Yep. How do I? There we go. A little bit less glare. I'm sorry about the motion. So it's going to remove the material from the extruder, and after a few seconds, it's going to just ask me to rewind that spool so that the extruder is completely released. Let me bring the camera back up here so you guys can see that labs extruder being loaded. Framing the extruders again for you guys to have a better view. All right, I can now go ahead and rewind my spool, pulling that material back out. Once it's removed, I'll just store the material for now in the drawer bay. I don't want to, keep it anywhere else. The good thing about the drawer bays and Method is that they actually keep the material dry and free of moisture. They are not just plain boxes. They actually have humidity sensors in them that track the humidity levels of your materials and make sure that they stay, in optimal conditions for printing. Now, I'll go ahead and remove the swivel clip again, remove the latch, open the gantry, and take out my extruder once more. So 1XA. Now, next up, I'll just go ahead and bring in my labs extruder, which I have here. Here we go. The labs extruder, the main difference is that it actually is serviceable, meaning it has an exposed tip, and that tip actually has a replaceable nozzle that you can change in case you're experimenting with a different type of material and for whatever reason that material gets clogged in your extruder. It's an easy swap to make. So I'll go ahead and put in my labs extruder now instead. The labs extruder is the only way for you to actually use third-party materials. Well, it's kind of a simple setup, but the idea here is that you're able to just use or sacrifice this element of the printer as opposed to exposing the whole system to a foreign material, right? The idea behind the labs extruder is for you to use a little bit more freely your machine, but at the same time have it done in a more controlled environment, which is just the one extruder that will be able to handle third-party materials. So I can just go ahead and drop my extruder in there. Here we go. Labs, closing the latch, bringing back in the swivel clip. And what you'll notice has happened here, now my printer actually detects that I'm using a labs extruder, right? So it's actually going to assume that I will be side loading my material. In order to side load the material, I'll just have to move my camera once more because, there we go. In order to side load my material, I'll have to expose the aux port and Method, right? So here I can go ahead and let's frame this a little bit better. All right. I can go ahead and expose the auxiliary ports of Methods. I don't know, this is not something that we usually see, I guess, or expose, but the idea here is that we wanted to give you guys access and open access to using third-party materials with Method. And that's how this port got incorporated into the printer, right? The idea being that you can have both port 1 and port 2, the auxiliary elements that allow you to route third-party material that doesn't need to be detected by the printer into your Method. I mean, it's not only a matter of detection, but also the fact that sometimes, as you see here, sometimes some of the spools are just like this one from Polymaker, sorry, are just way bigger than our standard spool, so they wouldn't fit necessarily in the drawer bay. This part is another interesting component that's also available for you guys to download. If you ever wanted to have a side mount for your Method, this file is available on Thingiverse for you to download. We'll probably post the link to the file over there, but it's a really nice design from one of our industrial designers, Quincy Quang. out in the design team, so shout out to him. But it essentially allows us to hang, well, actually I need to first enter the PTFE tube and then hang, because I have a little bit of an extra side pocket for that lip to come in. You see how I'm just, dropping this guy into that side pocket right there. And that allows me to more easily feed my third-party material. In this case, what I'm going to be using is a Polymax, Polymaker Polymax PC. That's the name of the material. I'll go ahead and get my clips. Where are my clips? Clean that tip of my material. Oop. All right. Just nest it there. And bring the, let's see, probably you guys want to see like the full process here. So just bringing my spool here to the side, that's one of the nifty things about this design. It actually uses the structure of the printer structure, as a way to actually hold up that filament. And I'm able to just guide my material through, and then, once it's there, bring you guys back up. And then once my material is through, I can just go ahead and either route it, naturally following that swivel clip route that I had talked to you guys about, or I can just, to make sure, remove the swivel clip and make sure that the tip of my material is actually flowing through. The biggest change here is that I'm actually not using the standard sensors and the standard routing of the machine, which can mean that you will have to manually guide the filament as I just did. And in doing, next step would be just to select my temperature. In this case, I know that this Polymaker material prints at 260 degrees Celsius. I can hit load. My extruder is going to start heating up, and as soon as it does, it'll start just pushing my material through. So, that completes it. That's actually, the topics that we had covered. I also want to have enough time for you guys to ask any questions that you might have. I'll go and jump into the question sections while my material is being loaded, but let's see. Let's get started. Does method need to stay turned on in order to keep the material dry on the base? No, the base themselves have little gaskets here, rubber gaskets that enclose the material. While the method is on, however, you actually, since it's heating itself up, you have a drier environment. So the answer is no, you still can keep your materials in the bay and not have them be exposed to humidity. However, if you're turning your machine down for a few days, maybe for the weekend, I would say it's just better to take the material out, put it back into the Mylar bag, and store it that way. How many types of extruders are there? We have 7 extruders. So we have extruder 1, which is for PLA, PETG, nylon. Extruder 1XA, which is for ABS, ASA, and I'm blanking out on other materials. We have extruder support 2A, which is for PVA, support 2XA, which is for SR30, the last extruder, the 1C extruder, and I think that's it. Yeah, sorry, 6 extruders. What are some common defects in extrusion processes? Well, I would say sometimes when you're swapping back and forth materials, you can see some contamination happening. So either that, or sometimes if your material absorbs moisture, then you can see some bubbles forming in your filament, and that also can affect the extrusion process. But it's mostly due to either material contamination or higher material humidity. What is the difference between hot and cold extrusion? Cold extrusion is usually a more industrial process that's used, for example, for some metals, but we don't use cold extrusion here. You always heat up your extruder first, and then actually, that enables you to use the thermoplastic and print with it. How often should I change my 3D printer nozzle? I would say, I haven't done it only with the labs extruder. I have done it, and that's because when swapping, as I was saying, back and forth between different types of materials, yeah, you can just contaminate the nozzles, and that can in turn create or cause plugs in your nozzle, and that's how it happens. Ballpark is probably with the Labs extruder every 3 months, 3 to 6 months, I'll just swap my extruder, sorry, my nozzle, so not too bad. Are 3D printer nozzles universal? Well, no. Most of them use a 400 micron nozzle, like most 3D printers, or FDM 3D printers, but it all depends on the brand and the type of the extruder that you're using. I'll start wrapping up. I don't know, I mean, just maybe if you guys have any more questions for us, but if not, as always, it's great to see you guys here. I hope that you found this video informative. If you have any more questions, do send them out to either hello@makerbot.com or Felipe, Felipe @makerbot.com. You know, also on social media, we keep an eye on those two channels @MakerBot, both in Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, let us know if you have any more questions, comments, or concerns. And otherwise, we'll talk to you guys again next time. So again, thank you guys so much for joining today. It's my pleasure as always to have you here. And again, happy printing. Have a good day.